At 18, society does something kind of insane. It lets you sign legal contracts, take out student loans, move across the country, vote, pick a major, choose a career path, start building credit, maybe rent an apartment, maybe decide who you are becoming. And then after handing you all of that in the span of about a year, the world kind of dusts off its hands, looks at you, and goes, okay, good luck. Do not mess it up. But nobody gives you a manual. Nobody gives you a map. And honestly, most of the people your age who look like they have it figured out, they do not either. That feeling where you are technically an adult, but privately you still feel unfinished, that is what I call being an underage adult. And I think it explains why so many people feel completely lost in their teens and 20s. Not because they are broken, not because they are lazy, not because they are behind, but because society promotes you to adulthood years before you are actually ready to be one. Once you see that, the whole feeling starts to make a lot more sense. Let us talk about it. Welcome back. I am DuckTake. This is the place where we slow down and talk through the stuff people go through all the time but rarely explain properly. Today's episode is about that strange stretch between your late teens and your late 20s, the period where you are old enough to be responsible for your life, but nowhere near experienced enough to feel confident actually living it. Maybe you are in college. Maybe you are working. Maybe you are taking a gap year, trying out a trade, grinding through grad school, juggling a first job and a second job and a business idea, or just trying to pay rent without your bank account looking personally offended at you. And underneath all of it, there is this quiet little question running on a loop. Am I supposed to know what I am doing by now? The short answer is no. But the reason is more interesting than that, and that is what I actually want to get into today. Let me tell you about where my head was at around 21. Everyone around me seemed to be locking into something. I knew people landing accounting jobs, people grinding to get into med school, people launching businesses, people packing up and moving across the country like it was nothing. And every single one of them seemed completely certain about exactly where they were going. Meanwhile, I was sitting there thinking, how does everyone else already have a plan? Here's what took me years to figure out. Most of them did not. They were not any less confused than I was. They were just a whole lot better at hiding it. I did not have a word for that gap back then. The one between how certain everyone looked and how lost we all actually were. Now I do. That is the underage adult. And if any part of that sounds familiar, this whole episode is for you. Here is the contradiction at the center of all this. In the US and Canada, 18 gets treated like a giant switch somebody flips. And yes, the details vary. The age of majority is 19 in some Canadian provinces and territories. The drinking age moves around depending on where you live, and a lot of rules change state to state and province to province. But the general message underneath all of it is the same. Somewhere around 18, society quietly decides you are responsible now. You can take on debt, sign paperwork, vote, move out, make decisions that reach into your money, your education, your relationships, your career, your whole future. The problem is that your emotional maturity does not update on that same schedule. Your judgment does not suddenly become premium software because you had a birthday. There are no patch notes. Nobody wakes up the morning of their 18th thinking, yes, I now fully understand taxes, boundaries, credit scores, career planning, emotional regulation, health insurance, burnout, and whether this person I am dating is actually good for me. No, most people wake up feeling like the exact same person they were the day before. Except now the stakes are higher. That is the underage adult problem in one breath. Legally adult, emotionally unfinished, expected to choose while still learning how to choose. And that gap, that quiet little canyon between the two, is where a huge amount of the anxiety actually lives. Because freedom sounds incredible when you do not have it yet. Then you get it, and you realize freedom was never just permission. Freedom is responsibility without supervision. And that is a lot heavier than anyone makes it sound. When you are younger, life runs on a track, and the track is doing a lot of quiet work for you. Elementary school hands you to middle school hands you to high school hands you to high school hands you off to college or a trade or a job or whatever is next. There are deadlines and grades and teachers and rubrics and tests, and even when all of that is stressful, at least it is telling you what the goal is. Hand this in. Finish this course? Clear. Then adulthood shows up and very politely removes the answer key. Suddenly nobody can tell you the correct life. One person goes to college and regrets the debt. Another skips it and feels behind. Someone lands a stable job and feels trapped. Someone starts a business and feels like the floor could drop out any second. Someone gets into med school, looks wildly successful from the outside, and is privately running on fumes. Someone takes the tech job, has the money, and no life outside of work to spend it on. Someone travels for 6 months, looks completely free, and comes home broke and more confused than when they left. And somewhere in watching all of that, it lands on you life is not a multiple choice test. It is an essay question. And nobody tells you how long the answer is supposed to be, which is actually why feeling lost can be a sign you are thinking more clearly, not less. You are starting to see that there is no single correct path. There are only trade offs. And trade offs are harder to sit with than answers, because an answer says this is right, while a trade off says this might be right, but it is going to cost you something. That is the real texture of adulthood, not clarity. Trade offs. Here is a trap almost everyone falls into. You look around at other people your age and you assume they know what they are doing. They do not. They just post better. You see the announcement, the graduation photo, the internship, the new apartment, the LinkedIn update that reads, like it was written by a corporate motivational robot. Thrilled and humbled to announce I have accepted a new role, and your brain does the math instantly. Everyone is moving. Everyone has a plan. Everyone is becoming something. And somehow, you are the only one still loading. But what you are seeing is the edit. People cut out the messy footage. The second thoughts, the arguments with their parents, the debt, the loneliness, the stack of job applications that went nowhere, the relationship they are privately not sure about, the creeping suspicion that they picked the wrong major, the nights spent staring at the ceiling going, what am I actually doing? The highlight reel is not the full movie. You are comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's trailer. And that comparison gets genuinely dangerous because it quietly swaps out the useful question for a poisonous one. You stop asking, what kind of life actually fits me? And you start asking, why am I not where they are? And that second question will slowly destroy your ability to hear yourself. Because the more you obsess over everyone else's timeline, the harder it becomes to even locate your own. This stage of life is not just about building a career. It is about building a person. That sounds dramatic, but it is true. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. This is the age where questions that used to feel theoretical suddenly get real. What am I actually good at? What do I care about when nobody is watching? What kind of work can I tolerate? What kind of people make me feel smaller? What kind of life do I secretly want? Even if it does not impress a single person, when you are younger, a lot of your identity is just inherited. Your family hands you one version of who you are. School hands you another, your friend group another, your culture another, and you wear all of them at once without really questioning the fit. Then early adulthood starts testing those borrowed identities against reality. You try things and outgrow them. You fail at things. You realize some of your dreams were never actually yours. They just sounded good because other people respected them. And then you feel lost. But sometimes feeling lost is not proof that you have no identity. Sometimes it just means your old identity expired before the new one finished loading. That is uncomfortable, and it is also completely normal. You are not failing to know who you are. You are becoming someone in real time. And becoming is never clean. It is awkward. It is inconsistent. It changes direction halfway through. And it absolutely makes you cringe at who you were 2 years ago. But that cringe is not a bug. That is growth leaving evidence. Now take everything I just described and add the internet. A generation or two ago, your comparison group was small and local. People at school, people at work, people in your neighborhood. Maybe that one cousin who moved to Toronto or Vancouver or New York or LA and became the family's designated successful one. That was the whole pool. Now your comparison group is the entire planet, and it is in your pocket. You open your phone and there is someone 22 raising money for a startup. Someone 23 pulling six figures. Someone 24 buying a condo with a little help from their parents. Someone 21 backpacking across Europe. Someone your exact age getting into law school. And someone posting a day in my life from a downtown apartment that costs more than your entire monthly income. And then your brain does something genuinely unfair with all of it. It takes these separate people, each one good at one specific thing, and quietly fuses them into a single imaginary super person. This person is rich, fit, attractive, well-traveled, socially thriving, emotionally regulated, professionally accomplished, and somehow still has time to meal prep on Sundays. And that is who you end up measuring yourself against. But that person does not exist. You are not falling behind one human being. You are losing a race against a collage. That is the real reason the internet makes this stage feel worse. It hands you more information without handing you more wisdom. It shows you more options without giving you more direction. It gives you infinitely more people to compare yourself to, and almost none of the context behind their lives. So I feel lost curdles into I am behind. And those are not the same sentence. Lost means you do not know the next step yet. Behind means you have convinced yourself there was one universal schedule, and you somehow missed the deadline. But there is no universal schedule. There is only the life you are actually building. Let us pause for a second. I want to do something I am going to call the underage adult check. Ask yourself this: when you were 15, did you correctly predict who you are right now? Be honest. Almost certainly not. So why are you expecting today's version of you to perfectly predict who you will be at 35? Now, that is not a permission slip to drift. It just means you can stop demanding impossible certainty from a version of yourself that is, by definition, still collecting data. Your job at this age is not to know everything. Your job is to learn enough from movement that your next choice gets a little clearer than the last one. And that distinction matters more than almost anything else I will say today. Because a lot of people are not stuck from a lack of intelligence. They are stuck because they are waiting for certainty before they will act. And certainty usually comes after action, not before it. Okay, I want to slow all the way down for this one because this is the actual core of it. The hardest part of this stage is not simply that you have choices. It is that your choices start to count. When you are a kid, most mistakes get cushioned. Family absorbs some of it. School absorbs some of it. Your environment absorbs the rest. You mess up. And there's almost always a net under you somewhere. As you get older, that net gets thinner. Pick the wrong major, and now you have lost real time and real money. Take the wrong job, and you can burn a whole year of your life feeling miserable. Move to the wrong city and feel isolated in a place you cannot easily leave. Date the wrong person and watch it quietly drain you for months. Ignore your finances, and suddenly interest. Rent, credit cards, and cost of living stop being abstract words on a personal finance video. They become the actual texture of your week, so people freeze. And here's the thing I really want you to hear. It is usually not because they do not care. It is because they care so much that every single decision starts to feel permanent. And when every decision feels permanent, doing nothing starts to feel safer than doing the wrong thing. Except doing nothing is also a decision. It just wears a disguise. It calls itself waiting. This is where so many underage adults get quietly trapped. They are not lazy. They are overloaded. They are not careless. They are terrified of wasting their one life. They are not weak. They are just carrying adult-sized consequences before they have had time to build adult-sized confidence, and that is a genuinely heavy thing to carry. So if that is you, I do not think the move is to shame yourself into going faster. I think the move is to take the pressure off each individual choice. Your first job does not have to be your forever career. Your first city does not have to be your forever home. Your first plan was never going to survive contact with real life anyway. Your 20s are not a final draft. They are a testing ground, and a test is allowed to give you back information you did not expect. Here is the reframe I want to leave you with. Feeling lost is not the opposite of growth. A lot of the time, feeling lost is just what growth feels like from the inside. Because think about who actually feels lost. It is almost never the person who is checked out and never thinks about any of this. It is the person who has started paying attention. The one asking, is this really what I want? Am I doing this for myself or for approval? Does this path actually fit me? Or does it just look good on me? What am I really building here? Those are not lazy questions. Those are adult questions. The cruel part is that nobody warns you adult questions tend to show up well before adult answers do. So the question arrives, the clarity does not, and in that gap, that is where the panic lives. But that gap is not failure. It is transition. You are standing in the space between the person you used to be and the person you are turning into. And of course, that space feels unstable. If your old life no longer fits and your new life is not fully built yet, unsettled is the only reasonable thing to feel. You are not broken, you are between versions. And being between versions does not mean you are behind. It means construction is active. That is the line I would keep taped to the inside of your head. You are not behind. You are under construction. So what do you actually do with all of this? Because validation is useful right up until it is not. At some point, you still have to move. The mistake is believing you need to solve your entire life before you are allowed to start. You do not. What you need to build is the ability to act without full certainty. And that might honestly be the single most important skill of early adulthood. Not confidence, not passion, not a flawless 10-year plan. The ability to move while uncertain. Because direction is mostly discovered through contact. You take the class and find out whether the subject actually grabs you or just sounded smart. You work the job and learn which environments quietly drain the life out of you. You start the business and find out whether you love building or whether you just like the idea of being a founder. You date and learn where your boundaries actually are. You move somewhere new and learn what kind of place gives you energy versus takes it. You fail at something and learn. usually to your own surprise, what you can survive. You do not get any of those answers from thinking alone. Thinking helps, sure, but thinking without action eventually turns into a room with no doors. So instead of asking the enormous, paralyzing question, what should I do with my whole life? Ask a smaller and far less terrifying one. What experiment can I run next? A job can be an experiment. A course can be an experiment. A project, a city, a single honest conversation, all experiments. An experiment does not have to define your life. It just has to give you better information. And that is how direction actually gets built. Not by predicting the next 10 years perfectly, but by collecting enough honest feedback from real life that the next step stops being quite so blurry. If I had to crush this entire episode down to 3 skills, it would be these. First, learn continuously. Stay coachable, stay curious, and do not make your current identity so fragile that new information feels like a personal attack. You are allowed to change your mind when you learn more. That is not flakiness. That is the whole point. Second, tolerate uncertainty. And to be clear, this does not mean pretending uncertainty feels good. It does not. It means learning to keep functioning even when the map is incomplete, because nearly every meaningful decision you will ever make comes with incomplete information. And waiting until you feel completely ready usually just means waiting too long. Third, course correct without calling it failure. This one is huge. Changing direction is not automatically failure. A lot of the time, changing direction is proof you were actually paying attention. You tried something, you learned something, you adjusted. That is not weakness. That is navigation. A person who never course corrects is not necessarily disciplined. Sometimes they are just committed to a mistake, because admitting it feels worse than living it. So the goal was never to pick one perfect road and march down it forever. The goal is to become the kind of person who can keep walking, notice when something is wrong, and adjust without falling apart. That is the actual definition of adulthood. Not knowing everything. Recovering faster, choosing better, and moving with a little less panic each time. So if you are in your teens or 20s and you feel lost right now, I want you to be really careful with the story you tell yourself about it. Do not automatically translate "I feel lost" into "I am failing." That translation is too harsh, and most of the time it is just flat out inaccurate. You might feel lost precisely because you are paying attention, because you are outgrowing old instructions, because you are realizing life is far more complicated than school ever made it look, because you are trying to build a self at the same exact moment you are making real decisions with real consequences attached, because you are an underage adult. Adult enough to be responsible, still young enough to be unfinished. That does not make you defective. It just makes you human. The goal here was never to wake up one morning holding a perfect 10-year plan. The goal is to keep taking honest steps. Try things, notice what they teach you, adjust, keep your values close, stop worshiping other people's timelines, stop confusing visibility with truth, and stop comparing your entire life to someone else's best 30 seconds. And remember this, maybe that age is not supposed to feel certain. Maybe it is supposed to feel experimental. Maybe the goal was never to find yourself all at once. Maybe it is to build yourself piece by piece, choice by choice, correction by correction. So no, you have not lost your way. You are just walking into your own life for the first time. And the lights are only half on. Keep walking anyway. One step, then the next. I am DuckTake, and this is your reminder. You are not behind. You are under construction. I will catch you in the next one.